We all have a testimony, don't we? Every one of us has a story to tell. Where we came from, how we were raised, in the church, out of the church. A lot of people think of testimony as, well, how did I become a follower of Christ? It doesn't just end there. It's not just about how we were led to the cross, how we were led to Jesus, how we were brought into the church. It doesn't end there. It's what Jesus does with us after we get here. After you become a Christian, that's just the start of the story, isn't it? But we all are on this journey. We're all on this journey, hopefully, to heaven by way of Jesus Christ. But there's obstacles in the way, aren't there? The scripture reading today was in what book? Exodus. Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. How many of us can just think within ourselves, do I have another God in my life? Is there something that takes the place of Jesus in my life? Maybe not always, but takes up our time. I don't know if that's our phone, Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, movies, music, video games. I've only mentioned I don't even know, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. And I'm sure there's tons more out there. Our job, our family. Satan puts these distractions in front of us so that we lose focus of what's really important, and that's Jesus Christ. All of us are dealing with, on a daily basis, some type of God that gets in the way of our relationship with Jesus. If you say that's not true, then I think you're in denial, because all of us have something. My issues are not the same as Nadine's or Joyce's or Janelle's or Helen's or Jerry's or Clyde's. I can't relate to what other people's gods are, what other distractions are in your life that are putting a barrier or a wedge between you and Jesus. But I know there are wedges in my life. There have been in the past, and there still are. The first step in overcoming those is accepting that they're there and keeping our eyes focused on what the prize is. My God was sports growing up. Sports. Pretty innocuous. No big deal. I mean, they're just games, aren't they? But I grew up in a world that was so very different than the Adventist community. So very different than the Adventist community. I grew up on the west side of the mountains on a little island called Mercer Island, where my dad was a basketball coach for 42 years at Mercer Island. 52 years overall, won 952 games. My father's the winningest high school basketball coach in the history of the state of Washington. He is in state Hall of Fames, national Hall of Fames, you name it, and he's in a Hall of Fame for coaching basketball. So naturally, what did I do growing up? I played basketball. But I also played baseball, and I played soccer, and I played football. And my God was sports, because it didn't matter. It didn't have to be wintertime to play basketball. It could be any time of the year where I could go play sports. Or I could flip on the television set, and guess what's on? Sports, to one degree or another. That was how I was raised. I didn't know anything else. It was sports, and it was high intensity. It wasn't just, hey, let's go outside and play badminton. Let's just go outside and play a little game. I really had no other perspective. I never went camping till I was in college. I was in a gym. I was on a field. And it was competitive. And it was state tournaments and championships. And one thing led to another. Games, Tuesday night, Friday night, Saturdays, Sundays. It was all about sports. That's what my family revolved around. And my career took me all over the world. I went to Texas, I went to Australia, California, all across the country to play basketball. Played basketball Saturday mornings. Every Saturday morning from 9 to noon, all the little kids would, it's a little program my dad put together called Little Dribblers. And we'd have the fourth graders would play the fourth graders, and then the fifth graders would play the fifth graders, and the sixth. So it was nonstop. Evenings, weekends, nights. But it led me to college where I got a basketball scholarship. So the Lord blessed me enough to where I was able to go to college and play basketball. Even after college, then there was recreational leagues, and there was coaching the high school, so it never left me. This sport, and it still hasn't. Ask my family, do I still struggle with sports? Yes, I still struggle with sports. I need to get a balance. I need to be balanced. I need to understand that it's still part of who I am. And there's something in your life that is still a part of who you are that maybe other people don't know. But there's only a way to overcome that. Admit it, seize it, and say, Jesus, help me through this. Give me balance. Don't let these gods take over your place in my life. Keep Jesus first. So on one half of the family was my dad, sports. My mom, from a religious background, my mom was raised Catholic. So therefore, her children were raised Catholic. So I went to CCD, I was confirmed, I was baptized obviously as an infant. I went through all of what you're supposed to do as a Catholic child growing up. And one more thing about my dad is my dad came from a broken home. So my dad was had an alcoholic father, abusive relationship, got on a bus in the late 1930s in South Dakota and drove west. And so was raised by a mom who basically was a waitress in bars and was on the streets pretty much of Seattle at 5, 6, 7 years old, taking buses and basically doing it on his own in the late 30s and into the 40s. And so my dad had no need for God because he was self-made. He went from this broken home child to a success story. Do you need God in that situation? He didn't think so. So he had sports. So mom brought the religion into the home. So in our Catholic background and our Catholic upbringing, we never read the Bible at home. My only real religion was when we went to Mass, 5 o'clock on Saturday evening. Because we didn't want to wake up on Sunday morning, because guess what is on Sunday mornings? Football's on Sunday mornings. So of course we don't want to wake up Sunday mornings and have to go to church. We want to watch football on Sunday mornings. We never had family worship. We had to have a Bible in the house, but I never saw it. So as I was raised in this home, it wasn't my religion. It wasn't my relationship. It was my mom's. I did it out of respect for my mom. And I'm sure a lot of kids out there come to church because their parents are going to church, so therefore they're going to come to church. But it wasn't my own. And knowing I have children of my own, trying to instill in them that it has to be your own. It has to be your own. It wasn't my own relationship when I was raised. It was my mom. I was doing it out of respect for my mom. So what happened when I went off to college? I ran far, ran fast. I went to church the first Sunday I was there. And after that I said, why? This doesn't do anything for me. This isn't my relationship. This isn't my thing. So I ran from the religion. It wasn't mine, it was my mom's. But it's not a religion. I've come to figure out that it's not a religion. It's about a relationship. It doesn't Methodist, Baptist, Catholic, Mormon, Seventh-day Adventist, whoever, whatever. The question is what is your relationship? It can't be mom and dad's. It can't be grandma and grandpa's. It has to be your own. It has to be your own. I only had an intellectual relationship with God. I knew. I went to all the classes and I kind of knew. I was listening, but I didn't know Him. I knew of Him, but didn't know Him. So when I got to college and I'm on my own, not only am I not going to church, not having any relationship really with God, I felt like I was a good person. I didn't steal. I didn't swear. I didn't hurt anyone. So I was a good person by my standards. But I'll tell you, when I was in college, there was one teammate of mine that stood out. And he was a Christian. And I respected him more than any of my other teammates. His name was Rich Anima. 6'9", 230 pounds. He had a sweet jump shot, I'm telling you. Really, really nice jump shot. But my respect level for him was because he was a man of principle. When me and my friends were off doing college things, he would say thanks, but no thanks. He stood firm on his principles, and he lived his relationship with Jesus. He didn't push, he didn't prod, he didn't guilt trip, he didn't use methods. He just lived his life how he knew he was supposed to live his life. And he let all the shenanigans go on around him, of which I was a part of. But I respected him more than anybody else. And you're talking 30 years later. And he's the one guy I really respect and that I remember from my college days. And at that point in time in my life, I was a college kid. I didn't have any foundation. I didn't have any Christian principles that I was really standing firm on. So I enjoyed the world, the clubs, the nightlife, staying out late, being with my friends, going to parties. That's what I did. It was just who I was. I was on the wrong side of the tracks, and I didn't even know it. I had no idea. Because I didn't have a Christian foundation to stand firm on. I did not have a biblical perspective to see right from wrong. I didn't understand the great controversy. I didn't know this controversy between good and evil. I just thought, you live your life, you go to heaven. That's just kind of what happens. But I didn't understand this struggle between good and evil going on, this battle between this God and that God. I didn't understand that sports was a God. I didn't understand that nightlife was a God. I didn't understand that hanging out with my friends was a God. And it led me down the wrong path. My standard was, as long as I was a nice person and I didn't hurt anybody, everything was all okay. But that's because I didn't have a Christian foundation. I didn't understand who Jesus really was. I didn't understand the plan of salvation. And there's so many people out there that they just don't understand. They don't know right from wrong because our country, look at our country. Our country doesn't know right from wrong because our Christian principles are being done away with. That's the only foundation that we have to understand which side of the tracks to be on. I was living in the world. I didn't know that my end would have been destruction. That would have been my end. I would have been ignorant of the Bible truth. I would have been ignorant of who Jesus really was. But thank God He had other plans for me. He had other plans. And eventually, my life changed. Amen. Don't ever give up on your kids. Don't ever give up on your parents. Don't ever give up on your spouse. Whatever situation you're on, don't give up on who you're closest to. We all have people in our lives who we look at and we say, uh-oh. Love them. Live your life showing them what Jesus is. That's really what changed my life. Because one day I met a nice Seventh-day Adventist girl. And to be honest, with where I was in my life, she had no business dating me. It's just a straight up fact. She should not have dated me. I can honestly say, if my girls were to bring somebody like me home, don't do it. I'm sure we're going to Seattle this afternoon, so I'm sure we're going to have lots of interesting conversations in the car heading over the mountains today. But I would tell them, that might not be the wisest choice. And actually, her family said the same thing to her. Maybe not the wisest decision to go down that path. We met at a Christmas party. My best friend was dating her best friend. They said, hey, we got a friend. We're 25 years old. Hey, maybe they would go on a date or something. So we met, and I thought things were going pretty well on the first time we met at this Christmas party. And I'm like, well, hey, let's go out again. And she said no. Knowing the state I was in at that time, I could relate to that. She had just started dating somebody else a few weeks before that. So I respected that, because if I was on the other side of the coin, I would have wanted her to do the same thing with me. I did ask her if she thought she was going to marry the guy, and she didn't answer. But I said, okay, well, I like her. I respect her. I mean, she's a girl of principle, if you're not going to start dating more than one person at a time. And so there was a respect level there I had. right out of the box. But living in the Seattle area, and I would see her out at restaurants and at clubs or wherever we were a few times over the next few months. And I finally got a date. August 17th, 1989. 9 months after I first met her. Finally got a date. And so we went out. And I'm thinking, I knew pretty quick. This is a step up for you, Kyle. Hang on to this one. She wasn't so sure. I knew I was going to marry her right out of the box. I'm like, okay, this is it. This one's a keeper. This one's a keeper. And for obvious reasons, she didn't think the same about me. She wasn't so sure I was a keeper right out of the box. But I felt like she was. She was apprehensive to tell me her background, that she was a Seventh-day Adventist, because I was a Catholic. How's that going to mesh? How's that going to mesh? But I was a nominal Catholic at best. When she told me she was Seventh-day Adventist, I didn't even know what that was. What is a Seventh-day Adventist? I have no idea. No idea. About a year later, after we first started dating, her brother moved up from California. So we started hanging out together. And they started having religious conversations. Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way they should go, and they will not depart from it. Proverbs. How many parents hang on to that scripture? Well, it worked. It worked. Because Janelle at 26 and Garth at 29, who were out in the world doing whatever worldly things, got back together and started talking about spiritual things. And maybe it has to do with starting a family or getting married and raising kids or whatever the case is. But when you train your child up, they will come back to it. Just keep praying. Just keep praying. I know it's hard. And some of you are going, are you kidding me? I've prayed for 5 years. I've prayed for 10 years. I've prayed for 20 years. I prayed for... Don't give up. Did God give up on us? God could have given up on us. But He said, I'm going to send my Son to save you all. Don't give up on your children. So as they were talking about these religious things, one question came to my mind. There are thousands of religions out there. Thousands of religions out there. Why are you a Seventh-day Adventist? Why? And the answer that turned my head around was, because I've read it for myself. Because I've read it for myself. And I realized I had no knowledge because I had never read it for myself. Sure, I had read the scriptures and went to the classes growing up in the Catholic Church, but my mind wasn't on spiritual things at that point in time. My mind was on worldly things. My mind was on the next sporting event. When's my next game? When can I go shoot baskets? My mind wasn't on spiritual things. But now, that question really turned my head. And so I started, hey, can we have some Bible studies? She called her grandma and said, Grandma, who was 88 at the time, Grandma, Kyle wants to have Bible studies. What should I do? Get him Joe Cruz and Amazing Facts. Anybody ever read Joe Cruz? Everybody ever heard any of Joe Cruz sermons? If you haven't, you need to. They're awesome. And let me tell you something. He shoots pretty straight. Joe Cruz didn't beat around the bush. He was a preacher, and he told it like it was. And Amazing Facts now is run by Doug Batchelor, who also preaches it like it is. So a wonderful ministry. But that's really the Bible studies that got me searching. Started searching. We started taking Bible studies at the Green Lake Church in Seattle. And I was baptized in February of 2003. Baptized in February. So from this worldly life, of which there really was no hope, meeting someone, and then being able to have Bible studies, and then come to the Lord, it's a miracle. That's all I can say, is it's a miracle. After I got baptized, we didn't join a church right away. We were reading a lot of independent ministries, literature, and I would say we were kind of zealots at that point in time. We had a message, but I don't think I was talking to my friends and family in the right way. And I look back on that and I think, I don't know how loving of a spirit I had. I thought I did. But it was one of those things where, as I've gotten older and matured, pounding people over the head with the Bible probably isn't the best route to take. So I look back on that and I think I had some growth to do. Even though I was baptized, I came into the church, I had a tremendous amount of growth. Sometimes we look at people who are baptized and we think, oh, they're part of the church now. We're all baby Christians. We all have things to learn. We all need support. We all need church family. We all need that support system to help nurture us along. Well, I wasn't part of a church family at that point in time, and so there was really no nurturing. We were trying to preach this message. Finally, we came about, we joined the Redmond Church. It was just a little church company in Redmond outside of Microsoft where we started getting involved in the church. But basketball was still a huge part of my life. I was still coaching. I was still coaching with my dad in the late 90s. My nephew was now on the team. So my nephew was 16. My nephew now is the head basketball coach at Whitworth over in Spokane. So sports is a god in my whole family. And we love them. They're wonderful people. But I mean, now he's taken the mantle of the coach. It skipped a generation from me. But I was helping my dad coach at that point in time. And again, this competitiveness was still a part of me. It was about winning state championships. It was about competing at the highest level and putting the work in and going and scouting teams and putting game plans together. And I mean, it was pretty intense competition. We ended up winning the state championship in 1993 and 1997 and 1999 and went to the state semifinals 6 years in a row. And it was my world. But I was a baptized Seventh-day Adventist Christian. How do you balance that? How does Janelle balance that? Games on Friday nights and games on Saturdays and practices, and I'm traveling to scout on the weekends, but I was a baptized Seventh-day Adventist Christian. Shouldn't I know better? I'll tell you, perspectives change when you come from the other side of the tracks. Just because we're in one place with our understanding and knowledge of the Bible doesn't mean everybody else is. I didn't truly understand the beauty of the Sabbath for 6 years after I was baptized. 6 years for me to take a stand and say, this Sabbath is something special. I kept playing coaching games on Friday nights through 1998. Finally, I had to go to Mom and Dad's house, sit down with Mom and Dad, and say, my God is bigger than basketball. The Sabbath is more important than a basketball game. And we can all rationalize things, can't we? Oh, well, I'm with my family. Oh, well, I'm just hanging out with my family. It's no big deal. That competitive nature on those Friday nights was the furthest thing away from heavenly things. But it took me 6 years to understand that. Have some patience, brothers and sisters, with the brethren. Have some patience with people who may have just come into the church. Have some patience with your family. Have some patience with your friends. Just because you are at one place and you have a certain understanding of a biblical truth doesn't mean everybody else does too. Keep it in perspective. So I had to have a sit-down conversation with my mom and dad in their living room at home. Dad, Mom, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, and this is what the Sabbath means to me. I won't be coaching anymore on Friday nights. And you got to understand, we had gone to the state championship semifinals 6 years in a row. And the semifinal games are on Friday night. So you think that was a battle for me? Okay, we all go through battles, don't we? It's like, this is still my life. This is still part of my life. But I had to stand up for God. I had to stand up for God. And so I had to let him know I was not going to be coaching with him on Friday nights anymore. And my sister, Matt, is my nephew, and my sister Jill, she was so mad at me. I mean, she would not talk to me because he was still in high school at the time. So she thought I was dissing the family. She thought I was giving up the family. And she was so mad at me. But 5 years ago, guess what happened? She got baptized. Not into the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but she got baptized in Lake Washington. And then 2 years later, her husband got baptized. I think that gives her a perspective of where I was coming from, didn't it? And so, stand firm for your faith. Stand firm for your faith, but keep perspective on the brothers and sisters around you. Be aware of where they are on their spiritual journey. And just keep that in perspective. At that point in time, in late 1990s, we wanted to raise our kids out of the country, or out of the city, I should say. We wanted to live in the country. But I was still coaching. Janelle's grandma still lived in the Seattle area, and so she was a caregiver for her. And those two things kind of needed to go by the wayside before we could move. Didn't know where we wanted to move, but we knew we didn't want to be in the Seattle area to raise kids. In the summer of 1999, I decided, when my nephew graduated from high school and we won our last state championship, I said, I don't need to coach anymore. And at the same time, in June, She took her mom to Boise to go into a retirement assisted facility down there. And so we were open. We were free. We didn't have these obligations anymore. So we put it on the altar. God, we know we want to raise kids in the country. We don't want to be in the city anymore. Open a door. Ironically enough, about a month later, we put an offer on a house in Wenatchee. Who knew? I'd never spent any time in Wenatchee in my life, ever. I may have driven through Wenatchee on the way to Chelan. But other than that, but ironically enough, my dad grew up when he was 11 and 12 in Wenatchee and picked apples up off of Western Street. And I can't remember what elementary school he went to. But so I have roots in Wenatchee at some point in time. Excuse me. So we buy the house, we have our commitments, and so we move over here in the summer of 2000. We don't have any jobs. No jobs. Janelle has a job in Seattle. I was teaching at the time, and I gave up my teaching position. I didn't get a teaching position over here anywhere. And so we basically bought a home, and we're going to move without jobs. By the grace of God, Janelle's boss said, oh yeah, you can telecommute in the year 2000. Telecommuting was not even anywhere near where it is right now. So that was just, he said, oh yeah, you can live over here and use the internet. And so it was kind of a trial thing, but she was able to do that. And so I ended up taking a job in Seattle, so we would commute back and forth from Seattle, but we're living in Wenatchee. In May of 2002, little Faith was born, and I gave up my job in Seattle at that point in time, and I was Mr. Mom for 3.5 years. I was Mr. Mom for 3.5 years, and it was wonderful. It was me, Janelle, and Faith at home, and then driving to Seattle when Janelle had to go over to her job. And then in November, Selah was born in February of 2005, and in the fall of 2005, we started to kind of think that Janelle's job the company was going to be sold and her job might not be there. So I started looking for a job at that time. And in November of 2005, Janelle got laid off Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, I think it was the first week of December because it was right around Christmas time. So she got a Christmas present of getting laid off. And 28 hours later, I get a phone call from Washington Trust Bank. Hey, do you want to work for us? 28 hours. We had no jobs for 28 hours. How are we going to? We have 2 young kids. And it's like, Lord, you sent us here. You sent us here. You have to provide. And sure enough, He provided. He provided. And then by the grace of God, 4 months later, I get a call. At the time, we were going to the Wenatchee church, and I get a call from Mark Wittes, who was the acting principal at that point in time. And I had interviewed over there a couple of times, and they kind of knew. And I went to church with all of the people on the school board, and I knew people over there. And so they knew my background of teaching. And he called me up and said, hey, Monty Saxby, who's been here for 20 years, decided to go to Mount Ellis. Would you be interested in interviewing for the job? I said, sure. I'd never taught high school math before, but I can do it by the grace of God. And one thing led to another, and I interviewed for it, and I basically told them, this is who I am. If this is what you're looking for, I'm fine with it. But if not, I'm okay with that as well. I put my faith in God and said, if that's the direction you want me to go, God, I'll go. If not, I'll stay right where I'm at. I was good with either way. I was good with either way. And I got that job, And again, by the grace of God, I made it through my first year. Didn't think I was going to. It was crazy. And but now I'm going on this is my 13th year there, and praise God, I get to be around kids and in a Christian environment. And we're not perfect. CCA's not perfect. The teachers aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. But we just try to have a Christian environment with the kids and give them a chance to see Jesus. Amen. Give them a chance. Amen. And then on May 18th, or May 17th, 2010, on our 18th wedding anniversary, the family was eating at Olive Garden. And I had a series of mini strokes. I had a series of TIAs, transient ischemic attacks. And so I was rushed to the hospital. And I could have been one of those people where we all know he was only 46. She was only 38. I could have been one of those statistics. But again, by the grace of God, he had other plans. And they found a hole in my heart and a blood clot, blocked oxygen to my brain, and I needed to get a procedure done to heal me. Or that could have happened again, or it could have been worse and could have had a massive stroke, any number of things. And so we have a procedure that we're looking to do, and we're on our way to the hospital in Seattle, and we get a call from the insurance company, and they say, sorry, we're not going to insure this type of procedure. Where do you go from there? Well, the next procedure I had to have done was open heart surgery. So on November 2nd, 2010, I had open heart surgery in University of Washington, Seattle. I was pretty ignorant going into, I was just like, hey, no problem, open heart surgery. They'll just cut you open, fire it up. Janelle's a nurse, so she knew I was pretty ignorant on it. And but I think ignorance was good at that point in time. So I try not to worry too much. I try to let the worrying up to her. But we went in and had the procedure done. And I was on a ventilator. When you get done with the surgery, you're on a ventilator, and then they have to get you to breathe on your own. And they couldn't remove the tube because my gag reflex was so bad that they could not remove the tube. And it was pretty traumatic, coughing and choking, and I think they were pretty concerned about, okay, what do we do now? And at that point in time, Janelle said, can I play a song for him? And she played this song, and immediately my whole countenance changed. This song changed me from gagging, coughing, choking to complete calmness, to where they could take the tube out of me. So I want you to listen to this song and really listen to the words of it, because I think they're really, really powerful.
I wanna love you regardless if anyone else does. I wanna serve you even if I'm all alone. Though others forsake you, I wanna give you my faith and trust. Faithfully follow everywhere you go. I wanna love you regardless if anyone else does. I wanna serve you even if I'm all alone. others forsake you, I want to give you my faith and trust. Faithfully follow everywhere you go. You are my sun in the morning, my star in the night. You're my manna from heaven, you're my fountain of life. You are my oil, you're my healing, my constant delight. You're my shepherd protecting me, you are my guiding light. Well, I want to praise you regardless of anyone else does. I want to thank you for the wonderful things you do. It doesn't matter if I am poor, if I am plenty. Everything I have, I give to you. You are my sun in the morning, my star in the night. You're my manna from heaven, you're my fountain of life. You are my oil, you're my healing, my constant delight. You're my shepherd protecting me, you are my guiding light. Oh, some people say you're not reality. Some people see just what they want to see. I see your power all around me, and I feel your presence deep inside of me. Well, I want to love you regardless if anyone else does. I want to serve you even if I'm all alone. When others forsake you, I want to give you my faith and trust. Faithfully follow everywhere you go. You are my sun in the morning, my star in the night. You're my manna from heaven, you're my fountain of life. You are my oil, you're my healing, my constant delight. You're my shepherd protecting me. You are my sun in the morning, my star in the night. You're my manna from heaven, you're my fountain of life. You are my oil, you're my healing, my constant delight. You're my shepherd protecting me, you are my guiding light. Well, I want to love you regardless if anyone else does. I want to serve you even if I'm all alone.
That last line, I want to serve you even if I'm all alone. Powerful. Even if you're standing alone, and a lot of you are, keep serving him. Keep serving him. Who or what God are you serving, and do you have the ultimate unconditional faith in him? Will you serve him unto death? No matter what. Follow him always. In Daniel 3, there's 3 Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, starting with verse 12. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, O king, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Do you have any other gods in your life and any images that you have? Verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in the matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But the three next words, but if not, be it known, king, that we will not serve your gods, nor worship the golden image which you have set up. But if not, they were willing to die for God. They knew God could save them. They knew He, like that. But their faith and trust was in God so strongly, they said, even if God doesn't save us here, even if there's cancer in your family, even if there's pain and suffering and sorrow and addiction and abuse, and follow Him no matter what. But if not, God can save us through all of that. But if not. From the Bible commentary, their case rested in the hands of God, and they made their answer in complete submission to His will, whatever might be the outcome. Ellen White in Sanctified Life says, page 39, these three Hebrew boys possess genuine sanctification. True Christian principle will not stop to weigh consequences. It does not ask, what will people think of me if I do this? Or how will it affect my worldly prospects if I do that? With the most intense longing, the children of God desire to know what He would have them do, that their works may glorify God. The Lord has made ample provision that the hearts and lives of all of His followers may be controlled by divine grace, that they may be as burning and shining lights in the world. That is the ultimate faith. They were not afraid of death as long as God's will was done. That's all that mattered to them, was God's will. Good, bad, or otherwise. Isn't that how we should be? Do we have that same attitude as the three Hebrew boys? That we know God can get us through any circumstance? But if He chooses to go in another direction, if He chooses to take us in another, are we willing to go that way? We have to have the right attitude. My dad used to always say to me, choose your attitude, because it follows you wherever you go. How do we get that right attitude? How do we get that right spirit? How do we get that right mindset? How do we get that? So that we can have that faith and trust to where we have that attitude of, God, we know you can save us, but if not, I'm still willing to serve you. We need to follow God's plan as it's outlined in the Bible. And we need to follow God's path, which is pure and true and right. We have darkness all around us. Darkness everywhere we see it in our life. In our families, in our neighbors' families, in our families, friends, everywhere. But God has a way that's pure and holy and right. We have a privilege, brothers and sisters, to be part of a Christian movement, an end-time message and an end-time movement. And we've been given tremendous light in understanding the great controversy, Bible understanding. We're supposed to be people of the Bible who are in their Bibles. And I know I fall short. I know I do. We believe what we believe because we've read it for ourselves. I hope that's where you stand. You believe what you believe because you have read it for yourself and you understand it. And shouldn't we live what we believe? This world we live in, with all the distractions Satan throws our way and the darkness, despair, and dysfunction we experience daily, can only be overcome by the power of Jesus. Jesus is coming soon. I think we can all agree. There's no doubt Jesus is coming soon. How many roads are there? 2. The road to destruction has all of the gods of this world on it. That's the road to destruction. The road that leads to heaven is the one where the God of heaven is on. Where are you headed?